Reprendre votre thérapie, d'aller en partie. Votre fils a quand même...
Welcome. I'm your host, and this is Uncomfortable. I want to start off by thanking you, the listeners, and those of you who have subscribed to my podcast. The response has been beyond humbling. I want to encourage you to contact me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com with your experiences or topics you'd like to hear featured on future episodes of Uncomfortable. And now, part 2 of Opening Day.
And you asked the question if I hunt out there anymore. The answer was yes, I do, but I don't go out in the swamp anymore. Both of us took our stands down and left them. They're out there on the ground, but we our intent was to go back, but we never did.
So, you said typically to get back to that area is about an hour and a half walk. I assume that when you say you still hunt that area, but you don't hunt the swamp, that you're hunting closer to your car.
Yeah.
At any time, does it seem like all the experiences, all of the weird stacking of the rocks and the fences, did that all take place very near the swamp?
Yes, it's a border.
Did you ever notice anything odd or out of place, like in the area that you're currently hunting? Like on the way in.
We see we don't see the rocks so much, but we see the sticks still to this day. And I've had since this has all happened, I've had at least one other encounter out there that was pretty scary.
Tell me about that.
So it was about 2 years later. 2 years after that had all happened. I was going out alone, which we typically don't do. My brother-in-law kind of have an agreement. We both have an agreement together that we hunt it together.
Because of this?
Yeah. And I have one other daughter that has hunted out there with me since. And you'll hear from her in a little bit, but we basically hunt back to back. She's on one side of the tree more or less, or just a few trees back, and then I'm right here, but we keep each other close. But on this other instance, I was walking in, it was dark, early in the morning, and I noticed that I was being followed by something. And so I stopped long enough to text my wife and tell her, this is where I'm headed, this is what's going on, if something happens, this is where you're hopefully going to find me. And she
start looking here.
Yeah. She responded back with, why don't you turn around and come back? The reason I told her I wouldn't was because I had already gone through all the really thick stuff where I felt very vulnerable, and where I was headed next was more open woods. So I didn't feel as vulnerable. So as I went through, as I told her, I'm not going back through that stuff. I'm going to continue on. I have a hilltop that I sit on, and I have a valley on either side, so I feel a little bit better. So I continued on there. As I got to that spot, I noticed that I could hear one of them walking on one side of the valley of me, and the other was walking on the other. I thought there was only one. Turned out there was two. And I'm looking into the swamp. We're still close to the swamp. We're not in it. And they both continued on into the water, which is about 50 yards or so, maybe a little more out in front of me. As I was sitting there in my chair, because I had everything set up at this point, and I know we're not supposed to do this, but with two beings of some sort walking around me, I'm loading my gun. I was pretty nervous. So they're out in front of me, and they started screaming, kind of back and forth at each other. And it was the exact same scream that we had heard 2 years prior on opening day. And what really got my attention was the fact that when the first one screamed, animals in the woods ran everywhere. You could hear the commotion in the leaves. You could hear things getting out of that area. They knew whatever that was dangerous. But what really got my attention, and to this day makes me wonder, was squirrels left their nest, came down the trees, and ran. Why does a squirrel leave its nest? That just blew my mind. I could not wrap my mind around why a squirrel would leave the safety of a high tree nest to run away on the ground. So it screamed a total of 5 times. And
now, do you think, you said they were screaming back and forth at each other. Is that the impression that you got, that they were communicating between the two of them, or were they both trying to affect you being there?
They seemed like they were communicating, because it was like one would do something, then the other would respond. I'm sure they were trying to scare me, and they were doing a good job at it. So,
were you able to pinpoint an area that you thought that they might be?
Yeah, I did, and I turned my flashlight on too, but I could not. I had my flashlight the whole time they were walking through the valley, and I couldn't find them. I couldn't figure out where they were, so I never saw them.
What do you guess? How close do you think they were?
In the valley, they were probably 100 yards out, maybe a little more. But like I said, I couldn't find them with my flashlight. And then in the swamp, when they're in front of me, they're about 50, 60 yards out. So they had come up pretty close. I managed to get one of the screams recorded on my phone. After the first one went off, I'm panicking trying to get my phone because it was buried in layers. But I got one, so that was something. So.
And it was, you sent me that email.
I did.
With that.
So that was the second thing out there. Now, after what was interesting too is, I could hear them moving around prior, and I could hear them screaming, and then it went silent, which was terrifying because I didn't know where they went. I didn't know if they were sneaking up. I didn't know if they left, and all the way till daylight, I never saw them or heard them again. I don't know where they went. So it was pretty terrifying.
What was the walkout like?
I was very cautious. I kept thinking, especially in that area that's pretty dense, I kept thinking that I was going to get rushed, and even to this day.
Did you feel like you were being could you hear, were you being paced on the way out as well?
Yeah. I think I told you that as I took a step, I knew it was something was behind me. I knew that it was there, and I would stop, and I would hear one more step, and then I would walk a little further, and I would stop, and I would hear one more step, and that was pretty consistent all the way out. Because I kept, at first I thought something's behind me. I keep hearing something, and then that's when I stopped, and I heard the one more, and then I kind of tested that, and it kept continuing. So it definitely makes you think different. It definitely does. To this day, like I said, we don't hunt out there anywhere near like we did at all. And to this day, we still find, trees piled up that doesn't make sense. And some of these trees that we find that are broken are huge. They're bigger than twice as big as my forearm.
When you say broke, describe, like, where are they broke at? Is there still the stump and everything still on the ground? It's just broke off at a certain height, or
they'll either be broke off entirely, maybe down near the base where something it looks like something grabbed it in both sides of it and just snapped it or bent it back and forth. We have a few that we find that are bent over, where they're broken and bent over with things put on them, or piled up on them on the whatever's touching the ground.
Explain that. Piled up on it. What do you mean?
Like other branches. Like again, it's like they're building structures to kind of like territorial markers is what I've always called it.
Road signs.
Yeah, to kind of say this is my domain. You don't belong here. So we're in. Like I said,
has there ever been anything that was as overt as a large X or something that you would look at and immediately be like, man, that shouldn't be here? There's
a couple that look like an X. I think my other daughter's kind of at the table too. That we've seen a couple that aren't far from where I sit now. So yeah, there's definitely some. It's strange. You got to go out there sometime, and if you look at it, you'll see it. I won't have to tell you. Look at this. You'll see it.
Yeah. All right. Coming to the table is daughter number 2. Let's get back to Dad for a minute first. Let's go back to the structures that we were talking about earlier.
Okay. So the structures we were talking about during break here, they actually look like teepees around the base of the trees. So what they do is it's like broken branches, and they go all the way around. And some of them are bigger than others. Some of them might be 3-4 foot tall. Some of them might be 6 foot tall. It depends what it is. But those are the branches where I might have a pine branch from a pine tree that's way over there, 50, 100 yards away. So that's kind of more or less what the structures are.
And how prevalent are those?
We find them a lot throughout the property. And then the area where they kind of built, like I described it as a fence,
mm-hmm.
There was a bunch of them built pretty much in a line, and it looked like a fence. I mean, it looked like a fence that somebody would build to say, stay out of my area. And that's the ones that we took down. And as we took them down, a few days later went back, and then those were all built back, and there was like another row of them behind that even yet. So they built them back even bigger. So
they built 2 levels?
Yeah, like one in the
front. You get
front.
through the first one and you're faced with another one.
Yeah. I mean, and you can walk around them because it's just a tree.
Right. What would you expect or describe the length? How far does it span?
Out from the tree?
Yeah.
They might be a foot to 2 to 3 foot out. It depends on how tall they go. If they're really tall, then they go out further.
And these are leaned up against another branch, or are they shoved down into the ground?
Just leaned up against a tree. So they're broken off and then just leaned up against a tree. So yeah, we find them all over that property.
Yeah, deer don't do that.
No, I don't know what does that.
Raccoons don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not taking the time to do that. Yeah, it's very odd. And
to that, you've told me in previous conversations that you, I think you called it a gate or a door, where you'll put something up.
Yeah, when so the swamp, as I told you, it's really deep. So we kind of lay log structures down throughout as our trail to get out there. We have to wear chest waders to get out, and even with the logs down, we still have to wear chest waders to get out to that area. It's not as deep out where we hunt at, and there's trees out there, but it's still swampy. But yeah, we take tree branches and lay them across ourselves just to kind of indicate whether or not there's been somebody else out there. We rarely ever have them moved. But around the area where those were at, they were moved. So something had taken our sticks and used them in the structures. Pretty crazy.
That is such a strange phenomenon.
Yep. Yep. And she was out there with us when we found the footprints.
And this is daughter number 2.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
I just remember walking out, and on our way out, we saw these teepee structures, and we really didn't think anything of it. My dad was like kind of curious as to why somebody would put up or take the time to put up these teepee things.
Now, this is an area that you said earlier that you'd never seen anybody else hunting, even though it was private land or public land.
Yeah, they don't go out in the swamp. We do see people in what we call the mainland area where it's not swampy. We never see anybody out in the swamp, though.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, you're good. And then once we got out into the swamp and we had found the footprints, my dad was kind of curious, if the footprint was linked to the teepees somehow. But
Now, what were your thoughts when all that was going on?
At first I thought it was funny. I thought it was a joke. And then when my dad got like a concerned look on his face, I was scared.
Yeah.
In a way. But I was really young and I didn't think too much about it.
So she's had another experience as well.
Yeah.
Are we to that yet, or is there more to fill in before that?
No, state land's pretty much done with what we've experienced there. But yeah, we've had a few.
So now we're moving properties. We're moving to
Home.
your current homestead.
Yeah.
And that is, what, about a half hour?
Yeah.
Half hour drive?
Yeah, half-hour drive.
From the hunting property.
Yeah. Yeah, the hunting property is very swampy. Then it's got a mainland area that's higher ground. This is river bottom, and then there's farmland, but there's a lot of wooded land too.
I noticed that on the way in here. I was surprised. So, daughter number 2.
My dad and I were getting ready to go to school, like our daily routine. And we both came out to the truck at first, and my dad forgot something inside. So we ran back inside. And I was looking down at my phone and saw movement of the corner of my eye. So I glanced up and I saw this figure. And it was like a human figure, but it was a big human figure. And it walked from the passenger side of the truck to the right in front of the truck, to the driver's side of the truck. And I heard something to my right. So I looked over and it was my dad coming out of the house. Well, I thought my dad had walked in front of the truck and was getting into the driver's side. And when I realized that it wasn't him, I quickly looked back to my left side to see if it was at the driver's side, but I didn't see anything, and I just hit the lock button. And after I hit the lock button and looked back up, I saw red eyes staring back at me, and my dad had finally gotten to the driver's side of the truck and climbed in after I unlocked the truck, and I was just like, let's go. Let's just go. Let's pull out of the driveway and let's leave the house. We got to go. We just got to go. And my dad looked at me completely confused and was like, why are you in such a hurry to go? And I mean, he thought it was just because we were going to be late for school. And it wasn't until we got to the end of our road that I explained to my dad why it happened. And he spun the truck back around and went back home and was like, why didn't you tell me this while we were getting in the truck? And I'm just like, I was completely terrified. I didn't want to be anywhere near it or see it again. I didn't want any experiences like that again. And so when he turned around and went back to the house, I was like, no. We need to go to school. We just need to go. We need to not be near it. But he was, he's the one that kind of, in a way, runs toward something. I mean, it's at our home.
Right,
It
sure.
shouldn't be at our home.
Yeah.
But I know you had asked about why she thought it would be at our house. And in my opinion, I think that we had entered its territory. We had gone to his, or whatever it was, their home, and we had taken down their fence, and it was their way of saying, you have come to my house, and I'm going to show you that I am capable of coming to your house. And if you do anything to my family or our species or whatever, I have access, and I know where you live, and I can come to where you guys are now.
Wow.
So, yeah. After that, I only been to the swamp once with my dad. And it wasn't even the swamp, it was the land part of it. So.
You think that's what they were doing?
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah. Yeah, when she told me when we got onto the road, to the end of the road, what it was, I just wanted to get back home quickly and make sure.
Was there anybody at home at the time?
Yeah. Yeah, there were.
Now, what time? It was in the morning, correct? You're getting ready to go to school. What were the light conditions?
It was still dark. I remember it being in the winter. So it wasn't easy to see.
Snow on the ground? Did you happen to see any?
No snow.
No snow. Can you describe in best detail for me what you saw when you looked out the window of that truck?
I saw tall, and as it was going in front of the truck, headlights were on. And as it was going in front of the truck headlights, it wasn't like the light was shining through it. So it wasn't a shadow of any sort. The light stopped at it, and as once it walked past the light went back through. But it was just really tall, really dark, and it was quick. It was a couple seconds as it walked just in front of the truck, and my direction changed to the house when my dad walked out.
Do you have any recollection when it passed in front of the lights of the truck? Do you remember color? What color hair or any kind of skin tone or anything that you...
No, not really.
Just all dark.
Yeah.
And again with the self-illuminated red eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice anything remarkable about the eyes? Did it look like what you typically see as far as eye shine? It just was reflecting a different color?
No, it was clear as day that they were red. And I remember going and telling Michaela about it, and she was like, that's similar to what I had seen with the red eyes. But her difference was he stood up for her. For me, it was just the same height. And he didn't move, he just stared.
Can you make a guess as to how tall you think it was?
I'm 5'1", and it was well over the top of me. Probably more than 6 feet. But yeah, it was pretty tall.
Any lasting effects after seeing that?
I don't go out to the cars by myself anymore. I wait for somebody to come out with me. And I don't like going out in the morning. I don't let my dog out by herself in the front yard. She goes out with the other dogs. I don't want anything happening to my dogs. I don't want anything happening to me or my family members.
Yeah, the whole issue with dogs is a strange one because they seem to be able to sense their presence. They're aggressive towards canine. But the more and more I listen to stories and read about it, it seems like the dogs are kind of the bane of their existence. That they're capable of knowing, they're alerting that they're there, and they don't want people to know you're there. They're there, and that's where their issue lies with dogs. And sometimes more aggressive dogs that are not afraid and don't put their tail between their legs and then come running back in the house. If they go after them, there are reports of them not faring so well, and then not seeing them again.
Right.
Yeah, I mean
if it can tear a deer apart, tearing a dog apart would be no issue. Mm-hmm. And my dog likes to run towards things that she doesn't like, so.
Yeah, we definitely, the neighbors around the area actually started talking to me about seeing a large monkey around. We have a farmer next door who has since passed away, and the other one has his wife has moved on, sold the farm. They stopped in one day while I was getting the mail and asked me if I'd seen the monkey in the back of our property. That was the first time I had heard it from any of the neighbors. The neighbor on the other side of me said that he had seen a large, what looked like a monkey or an ape on the back of the property, and asked if I had seen it, because I know I have game cameras out. It was during the summer. I didn't have any game cameras out at the time. And then my mom had stopped by one day, and she said, hey, what's that in the back of your property running around? Do you have something back there? And I said, everybody keeps talking about this thing, and I haven't seen a thing. We do till that up from time to time, and I had walked back there and started looking, and found footprints that I think I had sent you those pictures as well.
Those are the ones that you sent me that were on the dried strata that were a little more difficult to see.
Yeah. Yep. I had found those footprints through the tilled area. So we, my daughter and I we put up 7 cameras on our house, hoping to catch something, and to date have never caught anything. So, but it kind of went silent. I mean, nobody has talked about it or seen anything.
Since you put the cameras up.
Since, and yeah, a little bit before then, but yeah.
And that's an interesting occurrence that you hear about a lot. Some of the theories are that, there are animals that see in different spectrums of light. And if they can see infrared, then those cameras that are surrounding your house are putting off an IR light. Mm-hmm. And if they can see it, they'll stay away from it.
Yeah, and I definitely believe that too, because we put the 7 cameras up, but we also have 2 driveway alarms as well. And just a couple nights ago, we had our driveway alarms went off at 11:30 at night, and I grabbed my phone, and from my phone I can see what our cameras are recording. And I looked at the footage. We had 3 coyotes, and the whole time the coyotes were there, they were staring at the camera. So we were seeing the coyotes. So I would absolutely believe that. I mean, they knew those cameras were there, mm-hmm. just the way they acted. So I would believe that animals have the ability to see or sense. And I actually have game cameras from the back of the property where deer have come up and looked at.
That's very common.
Looked right into my camera, where I have an eyeball basically in the camera, or a face of a deer. So again, I think it's very possible that animals can see the infrared.
Any other happenings around the homestead?
I don't think we've had any other ones here. It's basically just been those the girls seeing that.
Basically, ever since we stopped going into the swamp area.
Yeah.
They stopped showing up here.
That's really true. And this last season, my brother-in-law and I, we met first thing in the morning and talked about it very in detail. We weren't seeing any deer in the mainland area. It was very slow for us this year. We were very successful in the swamp. I mean, you can go out there and get deer anytime you want. And we discussed whether or not we wanted to go out there. And I told him I didn't, initially want to. He ended up going out, and he said it was just eerie. It was very strange to be back out there.
Because of the prior experience, or was he still feeling that there was something odd about that area ongoing?
I think prior experience, just, the fear that we have now.
Not something you'd ever forget.
No, never. And then I ended up going out there once when it got a little bit colder and things iced up a little bit. But yeah, it's very strange to be out there or to think about going out there again.
So the footprints that you talked about at the back of your property, roughly how far is that from the back of your home?
Maybe it's 5 acres here, and it's pretty narrow, so it's, I don't know, 300-400 yards, probably about closer to 400 yards back from the house.
Close enough.
Yeah. So, and then, since then, the tree line that my daughter had talked about being alongside the house, that's kind of been cleared out now. So that's no longer there, which makes us all feel a little bit safer. Honestly, it's kind of nice. It's always kind of nice to have that natural fence between, you and your neighbor's house.
Yeah. A little bit of privacy.
Yeah, and it looks good. They're flowering trees or whatever, but, that stuff coming down was kind of more welcoming than anything, just because we felt like that was a travel route.
Gave you a little bit of peace of mind.
Yeah, it's not so dense anymore. So,
any lasting effects from your experiences? I mean, nightmares, or is it something that you have a hard time letting go
of? For me, yeah, it took a long time before I stopped having nightmares. And it wasn't just me interacting or having some sort of interaction with it. It was my family members were having interactions with it. And it wasn't a good outcome. So I stopped. I tried to stop sleeping as much as I tried to become more nocturnal. I would sleep during the day if I could, or I wasn't just could sleep at all. But yeah, I would tell my dad and my mom about it all the time. And my dad still told me to start writing it down. But
Did you do that?
Yeah. But it's been a while since I've had a dream like that. Probably have one tonight since we're...
There's some segment of experiencers and researchers, by and large, they seem to be on polar opposite ends of what's called the woo. And the woo is typically telepathic communication from the beasts or entities with an experiencer, sometimes in the form of implanted thought or actual words in English. They are sometimes reported to be able to cloak themselves, which I think it was you or your sister used the word predator when, maybe it was your other daughter, when she said, was talking about the deer hanging in the tree, where they can actually bend light around them, or there is some part of their hair that is able to absorb the light from around it so that they become less obvious to the naked eye. And again, these are all things that are considered woo. Accompanying that are balls or rods of light in the woods, obviously when it's dark. And these things typically light up, but do not light things around them. They don't put off any illumination to what's around them. They are just a ball of light or a rod of.
I know my other daughter, and you probably remember this, after she saw the eyes for a long time, she would draw those eyes on paper constantly. I think you remember that. And we felt like, or I felt like that was her way of dealing with, the emotions of seeing those illuminated eyes. And it really did. I mean, I know for a long time I would pick up a tablet or a piece of paper or something, and there'd be eyes drawn on it, and I knew exactly who did it.
So I wonder, when you talk about the dreams of other family members having encounters with these things, it's a stretch, but could it possibly be them imposing the idea of what they can do,
right,
if you don't stay out of their area, which is terrifying.
Well, I know it's kind of interesting and really scary this year, but when I had not told her that I was thinking about going back to the swamp this year, at all, even just it being a day. And she came to me the day before I was going to go out and said, stay out of your tree stand today. I have a bad feeling it's going to fall down, and if you go and don't go to the swamp. And I hadn't told anybody that. I don't even think I told my wife. The only one I had a conversation with was my brother-in-law. So I just thought it was really odd that she would have even brought that up. And I asked her about it, and she said that she had a nightmare the night before. So
your dreams, do they seem fairly lucid?
Oh, yeah. They pretty much go into a lot of detail. So in that, I had the dream he had gone up in the tree and the wind was blowing and it fell down and he was in it. So yeah, I told my mom about it that morning and she told my dad about it. And I asked my dad later if he had gotten in the tree stand or not. But she said no, but...
You stayed out?
I did. Which is really hard to do because out there, you carry one in.
Yeah.
You want to use it. So, yeah, definitely tough. So, but yeah, we've all, I think we've all been affected by it. Like I said,
how'd your wife react to any of these?
She's kind of funny. She knows that what we've witnessed is real. She's seen our reactions. She's seen our emotions. She's seen the girls crying about it because they have, they've come in, like when one came in after seeing the eyes, she was terrified. And so she knows it's real, and she's supportive of it. We were talking about during the break that before we would see a Bigfoot show on, I would probably pass it over. And today I see something on and I'm going to watch it. Not because I want to watch it more so because I want to see if somebody found an answer. There's so many questions that I have, having witnessed this and gone through this, that I would love to get answers to the questions we have. I would love for somebody to find evidence to say, yes, this is real, and I can say, okay, now I can accept this, we were talking about it as a family earlier. In fact, my daughter's boyfriend's here right now, and, he said, I've never heard any of this. And it's because as a family, we just don't talk about it. We don't talk about it with our friends. We don't talk about it with relatives. We just avoid the subject because it does affect us so much. And sometimes people make fun of us for, telling the story or whatever. But for the most part, we really just keep it quiet because we don't want to open up old wounds, I guess.
Well, that being said, I really want to thank you all for talking about this with me, because I stated before the amount of detail that you guys have been able to hold on to and relay is astounding, and the number of incidents and the widespread, from one end of the spectrum to the other. And you kind of capped it off with the dreams for me. I don't think that's odd to have bad dreams about an event that scared you, but to have dreams involving other family members and not be you who experienced it, that to me seems odd. Why would you project that, the idea of that happening to other family members? Well, I'd like to thank both of the daughters for being on the show. We'll have to talk again about maybe getting your brother-in-law and getting his take on what happened that opening day. I want to thank you, and I promise you that this is not going to wind up being laughed at, and this is going to be a little bit of a voice for you guys, being heard by a bunch of people who don't think lightly of this subject. The unfortunate thing is, I feel that you're being lied to by your government and government agencies, because if they were to come out and tell you that, yes, these things exist, and yes, they're living in your woods, for God's sakes, what did it do to the forestry industry when they found out about the little spotted owl?
Mm-hmm.
How many thousands of acres of land had to be left pristine in order for that bird to continue to live? If they found out that there was in order to have a Bigfoot, that Bigfoot has to have been a baby Bigfoot at one point. Now this sounds ridiculous, but in order to have a population that can sustain breeding, it's been estimated that there has to be at least 5,000 across northern America. That's a significant number. And if you look into it and you get past just the pursuit of finding Bigfoot or Expedition Bigfoot, if you get past those shows that are designed for entertainment purposes, and you start looking down the rabbit hole at actual accounts, you'll find that they're in every state, and they're in almost every country, and they go by different names. I mean, almost out of 500 First Nations tribes throughout Canada and North America, almost every one of those tribes had a name for Sasquatch. In fact, Sasquatch is an Indian name. I don't remember which tribe it was, but they're hairy man. They're the stone giants, which refers to when they would take sap from trees and then put rocks to stick to their fur so that it would give them some basis and an ability to deflect arrows and weapons. Then you get over into Russia, and you have the Yowies in Australia, and the Yetis in Nepal, and they're all, just like we have several different races of human beings, there's different races of these beings throughout the world. And if they admit to it, then you have to make the determination, are they an animal? Are they a species of human that evolved not with us, but alongside of us? Do they have rights? The questions are endless. And it's no wonder that anybody can get a straight answer or get the truth because of, think about the camping industry.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the sustainable forests, the Forestry Service, national parks. If you came out and said that these things exist,
right? Who's going to want to go in the
woods? Who's going to want to go out?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's just good business for the public to not know.
And that seems to be the prevailing idea.
Yeah. Yeah. When this all happened to us, I tried to seek answers. I tried to find out, and I couldn't find anything. In fact, I was pushed more into not finding out than finding out, which is why it took us this long to even be willing to talk. So I know
that took some doing.
Yeah. You've asked me for a while, and in fact, you didn't even find out because I told you found out from somebody else that went to you. And then when we talked, we've been talking for a while, I guess.
Yeah.
And
it has been. It's been probably close to 3 months at least.
Yeah, you finally got me tied down.
And several hours of phone conversation.
Yeah.
Not to mention emails and text messages.
Yeah.
So,
Fortunately, you do feel threatened by these things to an extent. But like my dad was saying, when you start looking for answers, you feel more threatened by your own species at that point to disclose the whole thing and just kind of live with it.
That's a very insightful young lady you have there. And it's unfortunate, but I think you're right.
Yeah. But we talked about it going in, and, my wife was very skeptical with having us come forward and tell our story. And she's more worried about safety, really. And but we also talked about it as a group and said, if our story can help others find some answers or
Some closure,
and then maybe something that they've witnessed then we're willing to do it.
And I guess that, in closing, I'll impart to you that if you're interested in seeking some closure for yourselves, I can recommend a handful of people that are doing just what I'm doing, only on a much larger scale. If you go on YouTube and look at howtohunt.com, there's a gentleman by the name of Steve Isdale. He's a guide, a professional guide, and I was telling your dad during one of the breaks, basically he was a hunter who started getting inundated with emails from other hunters having experiences with these creatures, and his hunting job now has been put on hold, and literally every 2 to 3 days he will put out a YouTube video where he is in and around his area of where he lives in Canada, with beautiful scenery in the background, and he will sit there, he'll pull out his phone, and he will read 2 to 3 experience or emails in each episode. And it is, there's no commentary on the email in a derogatory sense. He's not making fun. He's not putting this stuff out for any other reason than to give people who, some will give their names and say you can use it, and some people, they don't want their names out there. But he'll read every email, and it's kind of cathartic because it is snowballed into more and more and more, and he literally can't keep up with the number of emails of people. And I'm talking thousands of emails of people who are having these experiences throughout the world, but primarily in Canada and North America. Also, there's another guy, 2 other guys. One is called Thinker Thunker, and he has a YouTube channel where he goes and breaks down video and photographic evidence by putting different filters on it, and he does an amazing job of putting locomotion to the figures that are in the videos that he's working with, and doing a complete breakdown on whether or not the actual length of the limbs are congruent with a human, or if they surpass what known human dimensions are. And that is how he puts his stamp of approval on videos or photos of whether he feels that somebody's caught an actual, or if they're trying to hoax. Because, the length of from the shoulder to the elbow, or from the knee to the ankle, it differs dramatically from people, and even the angle at which your calf and your knee bends with a Sasquatch, it bends at the knee at almost a 90-degree angle, and the legs are always bent. And according to Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who is a locomotion specialist for Idaho State University, who is probably the world's foremost expert on track castings, he's found that they have a mid-tarsal break, which when you take a step, your foot bends where the toes pivot. The mid-tarsal break actually bends at the middle of the foot. And that is congruent with the idea of something that is supporting a good deal of weight, and something that is traversing over uneven ground.
I know you had told me when you looked at my photographs of the feet,
Mm-hmm.
I had always thought that the way that the big toe comes back was odd, and questioned that. But you had said you had explained to me that that's actually what they think.
Yeah.
It's more like because of what you just described, and so that kind of put it in perspective for me. We in our conversations prior, based on those photographs, because I always thought that was a little bit strange.
And there's even some evidence, video evidence, that may support the idea that they can actually, they actually spend some of their time in the trees, and that quite possibly with that the big toe being lower, it's more in line with what we would recognize as far as a chimpanzee or a orangutan, something of a simian nature, which would allude to possibly being a hybrid between something more human but still holding on to some of the relic of being ape.
Right. And the fact that the squirrels, like I said, that'll never leave my mind. I'm always thinking about the fact that squirrels leaving the nest. Why? So that tells me that they can get up in the tree. And then with the deer parts up in the tree that we found,
yeah,
they've got to be able to get up to retrieve that. So,
my guess is that it just gets strewn up there by pure strength. And if it's not just a display to be a show to intimidate you, if it is actually something that they're planning on retrieving, then yeah, they would have to be able to climb the tree. Again, I want to thank all of you. Thank you for having me in your home. I appreciate it. Hopefully I didn't open up any wounds that are gonna. I'll give you my cell number. If you have a bad dream tonight, I'll let you call me and wake me up in the middle of the night and say, "You dirty bastard." But I certainly appreciate it, and hopefully this will bring some kind of solace to some people who have had these kind of experiences as well.
Sure. Happy to help.
Like I said,
it's definitely not salt on the wound. It gives some closure to, like I said, with being afraid of this species that you are actually considering is out there, and you're afraid of your own species at this point to open your mouth. So having a chance to tell the stories and feel like you're being listened to, I'm sure it's going to be comforting. It's not only been comforting to us, but it'll help other people out. So we're happy to do it.
well said. All right, guys. Thank you,
Thank you
so much. I appreciate it.
Yep.
My belief in this phenomena was already firmly rooted. But after looking into the eyes of this family while they relived their experiences, I left their home shook. My expectations? I'd feel some elation having listened to the most compelling eyewitness account I'd ever heard. Instead, I felt a sadness. I felt their desperation for answers. I felt their fear.